Good morning. We are in 1 Corinthians 10, and I have a verse that will start out. Maybe you just need a little bit of correction at the top of this morning. Maybe you need some inspiration. Maybe you just need to set your mind on the right thing. If so, all of those things, 1 Corinthians 10, it's got you. Now, these things happened to them as an example, but they were written down for our instruction, on whom the end of the ages has come. Therefore, let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed lest he fall. There you go. Top of your morning. If you think that you are standing, take heed lest you fall. This is a thought that I try to think about a million times every single week. The reason why is I grew up in the church, and it can be so easy for me, especially as a pastor, to think, okay, I'm doing well. I've got this Christianity thing on lock. I know how to follow Jesus. But the thing is, that I can grow so overconfident, especially because of my track record, that instead of relying on the daily grace of God to be the type of human being that he wants me to be, I can just start to believe this lie that Dena is a good person. Dena is not a good person. I am a sinner saved by grace, and it is only through the grace of God throughout my life that he has kept me from sin. And it is only through his grace that I will continue to be kept from sin. So therefore, I, as a Dena, must take heed. If I think I'm standing, I have to take heed lest instead I be tempted and fall. That's an amazing encouragement for you. But this is a bigger passage because it tells us how. How do we take heed in case we're about to be overconfident and thinking, oh, we're doing so well? Well, really, we're instructed in this passage that the way that we should take heed is by paying attention to past people who have lived their life trying to follow God. We should read histories. We should read biographies. Specifically in this passage, we should pay attention to the Old Testament. We should be reading stories about people who were called by God, who were following God. And in so many ways, they were given all of these privileges and blessings that belong to being the people of God. And yet, so many times, the story goes, they fell into temptation. They failed. They did not continue to depend on God's grace. They did not continue to seek God's face. And so their pathway ended up in the same exact direction as someone who didn't even begin knowing God. It is so easy to walk away from Jesus. So as you begin this morning, I don't know if there's maybe some sin that is starting to creep up in your life. And you're thinking, I'm up to that temptation. I would never fall into that temptation. Think the opposite. Think, I am so vulnerable to sin. I am so vulnerable to temptation. In fact, as I go throughout my week, I'm going to fill my brain with stories of people who were following God, pursuing God, and yet they fell into sin. And I'm going to learn from their example so that I can stay dependent on Jesus Christ and his grace so that I can continue a life that is close to him instead of one that drifts away from him. So as you start out your morning, take heed if you think you're standing, lest you fall, because we want to finish our journey. We want to run the race in such a way that we will receive the prize. And we don't want to be stopped in the middle of our race and taken down by sin. Rather, we want to fix our eyes on Jesus and continue to run that race. And the best way to do that is to pay attention to the people that stumbled along their path. Many of them, they stumbled, and Jesus picked them back up, and they were able to finish their race. But let's take heed and let's not even have that stumbling point in our story. Hope that encourages you this morning.